Far beyond the European mainland, where the Atlantic stretches toward an endless horizon, Madeira rises from the deep like the summit of a forgotten world. Its dark volcanic cliffs stand against the restless ocean, while white waves break below in clouds of spray. Above them, emerald valleys disappear into mist, and narrow waterfalls descend from mountains wrapped in ancient forest. At sunrise, golden light touches the island's highest peaks, while the villages below remain hidden beneath a silent sea of clouds. Laurel trees gather moisture from the passing fog, tropical flowers brighten hillside gardens, and winding trails follow stone channels through some of Europe's oldest surviving woodland. Madeira is a land shaped by dramatic contrasts. It is wild yet cultivated, isolated yet connected to centuries of Atlantic exploration. Fire created its foundations, rain carved its valleys, and generations of islanders transformed its steep slopes into vineyards, farms, and settlements. Here, between mountain and ocean, nature and human history have formed a landscape unlike any other, an island born from volcanic darkness and transformed into a garden above the sea. Madeira lies in the northeastern Atlantic Ocean, approximately 1,000 kilometers southwest of mainland Portugal and several hundred kilometers west of the African coast. It is the largest island in the Madeira archipelago, a Portuguese autonomous region that also includes Porto Santo, the Desertas Islands, the Selvagens Islands, and several smaller rocky islets. Although Madeira appears isolated on the surface, it is actually the visible summit of an enormous volcanic structure rising thousands of meters from the ocean floor. Its formation began millions of years ago, when repeated underwater eruptions released layers of basaltic lava. Over time, these eruptions built a massive shield volcano that eventually emerged above the Atlantic. Later volcanic activity continued to shape the island, creating mountains, lava fields, craters, and rugged coastal formations. When the eruptions gradually ended, erosion became the dominant force. Heavy rainfall carved deep valleys and narrow ravines through the volcanic rock, while powerful ocean waves cut towering cliffs along the coastline. Today, Madeira is defined by its dramatic elevation changes. Pico Ruivo, the island's highest point, reaches 1,862 meters above sea level. Nearby ridges form sharp, jagged silhouettes that often rise above the clouds. In places such as Cabo Jareo, immense sea cliffs descend almost vertically toward the ocean, while the São Lourenço Peninsula reveals exposed layers of reddish and black volcanic stone. Natural lava pools at Porto Moniz, isolated rock formations, hidden valleys, and steep mountain passes all reveal Madeira's geological past. Though its volcanoes are now dormant, the island's landscapes remain a powerful record of the forces that lifted it from the Atlantic depths. Madeira's climate is shaped by its position in the Atlantic Ocean, its subtropical latitude, and its steep mountain relief. Throughout most of the year, temperatures remain mild, softened by the surrounding sea. Yet the island does not experience one uniform climate. Instead, it contains a remarkable collection of microclimates compressed into a relatively small area. Along the southern coast, especially near Funchal, the weather is generally warmer, sunnier, and drier. The northern slopes receive more cloud, wind, and rainfall as moist Atlantic air rises against the mountains. As the air climbs, it cools and condenses, covering the highlands in drifting mist and feeding countless springs, streams, and waterfalls. Altitude creates additional layers of life. Near the coast, dry vegetation and subtropical crops flourish beneath bright sunlight. Higher on the slopes, humid forests dominate the landscape. Above the tree line, exposed peaks endure colder temperatures, powerful winds, and rapidly changing weather. These variations allow many different ecosystems to exist side by side. A traveler may leave a sunlit coastal village, enter a cool forest wrapped in fog, and emerge above the clouds within a single journey. The mountains also function as natural water towers. Trees capture moisture from the passing clouds, while volcanic soils absorb and release it gradually. This continuous movement of water sustains Madeira's forests, farms, villages, and rivers, making climate one of the island's greatest creative forces. At the heart of Madeira's natural world lies the Laurisilva Forest, an ancient ecosystem that transforms the island's northern mountains into a landscape of shadow, mist, and deep green. Walking beneath its canopy feels like entering a surviving fragment of another geological age. Millions of years ago, laurel forests covered large areas of southern Europe and the Mediterranean. As the climate became cooler and drier, most of these forests disappeared. On Madeira, however, the mild temperatures, abundant moisture, and isolation of the island allowed part of this ancient vegetation to survive. The forest is dominated by evergreen trees such as til, barbasano, Madeira mahogany, and bay laurel. Their twisted trunks and branches are covered with mosses, lichens, liverworts, and delicate ferns. Moisture gathers on their leaves and falls slowly to the forest floor, even when no rain is falling. This process helps recharge underground water reserves and feeds the streams that flow through the island's valleys. The Laurisilva is also a sanctuary for wildlife found nowhere else on Earth. The Madeira laurel pigeon moves through the upper branches, feeding on forest fruits, while the tiny Madeira firecrest searches among the leaves for insects. Endemic bats, butterflies, beetles, spiders, and land snails occupy hidden ecological niches beneath bark, stones, and wet vegetation. Beyond the native forest, Madeira's lower slopes and botanical gardens display an extraordinary variety of plants. Orchids, camellias, jacarandas, proteas, bird of paradise flowers, and tropical fruit trees thrive in the island's gentle climate. Yet the Laurisilva is more than a collection of rare species. It protects steep slopes from erosion, stores carbon, regulates water, and preserves the ecological memory of a vanished world. In its mist-covered valleys, Madeira reveals its greatest natural inheritance, a living forest shaped by isolation, climate, and time. Life on Madeira has always been shaped by steep mountains, limited farmland, and the constant presence of the Atlantic Ocean. Villages developed wherever people could find sheltered bays, reliable water, and enough level ground to build homes. Across the island, whitewashed houses with red-tiled roofs cling to hillsides, while stone terraces rise above deep valleys in careful horizontal lines. For generations, Madeirans transformed difficult terrain through patience and collective labor. Farmers built retaining walls by hand, carried soil onto rocky slopes, and cultivated bananas, grapes, sugarcane, vegetables, and tropical fruits. Water was shared through the levada network, linking distant communities and turning dry land into productive fields. Traditional crafts remain an important part of the island's identity. Madeira embroidery is known for its detailed handwork, while wicker weaving developed around villages such as Camacha. In Santana, triangular houses with steep thatched roofs preserve the memory of rural architecture designed to withstand heavy rain. Music, folklore dancing, religious processions, and seasonal festivals bring communities together. During the flower festival, the streets of Funchal become filled with floral displays, costumes, and music. The wine festival celebrates the grape harvest and the long history of Madeira's vineyards. Local food also reflects the island's landscape. Biolello do caco, espetada, black scabbardfish, tropical fruits, and pancha connect agriculture, fishing, and family tradition. Together, these customs reveal an island culture built not only on survival, but on creativity, hospitality, and a deep respect for land and sea. Madeira entered recorded European history during the early 15th century, at the beginning of Portugal's great maritime expansion. In 1418, Portuguese navigators reached the nearby island of Porto Santo. The following year, João Goncalves Zarco, Tristão Vaz Teixeira, and their companions arrived at the larger, heavily forested island that became known as Madeira, meaning wood in Portuguese. Permanent settlement began during the 1420s. The newcomers found abundant timber, fertile volcanic soil, and streams descending from the mountains. Forests were cleared, towns were established, and agriculture quickly became the foundation of the new colony. Wheat was among the first major crops, but sugar cane soon transformed Madeira's economy. During the 15th and 16th centuries, the island became one of Europe's important sugar-producing centers. Merchants, sailors, craftsmen, and laborers connected Madeira with Portugal, Africa, the Mediterranean, and northern European ports. This prosperity was also tied to enslaved labor and to the wider growth of the Atlantic colonial economy. Because much of the farmland lay far from natural water sources, settlers began constructing levadas, narrow channels designed to carry water from the humid mountains and northern slopes to the drier agricultural regions. Over centuries, these channels expanded into an extraordinary network of tunnels, aqueducts, and cliffside waterways. As sugar production declined, wine gained importance. Madeira wine became especially valued during long sea voyages, when exposure to heat and movement altered its flavor and improved its durability. Located along major Atlantic routes, Madeira served as a stopping point for ships traveling between Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas. It provided fresh water, food, repairs, and shelter. In this way, the island became not merely a distant colony, but a strategic crossroads in the development of the Atlantic world. Today, Madeira is a modern Atlantic destination where tourism, agriculture, and local tradition exist side by side. Visitors arrive for the mild climate, dramatic mountain scenery, volcanic coastline, and historic streets of Funchal. Cruise ships enter the harbor, hikers follow trails above the clouds, and travelers explore botanical gardens filled with flowers from across the world. The island's levadas, originally built to transport water, have become some of its most famous walking routes. These narrow channels guide hikers through tunnels, dense forests, deep ravines, and valleys crossed by waterfalls. Mountain trails around Pico Ruivo and Pico do Arriero reveal jagged peaks, shifting mist, and wide views over the Atlantic. Agriculture remains important, even though farming Madeira's steep terrain requires great effort. Bananas grow on warm coastal terraces, while vineyards cover hillsides shaped by generations of stonework. Sugarcane is still cultivated for local rum and traditional products, and farmers also produce tropical fruits, vegetables, and ornamental flowers. Tourism has created employment and improved infrastructure, but it has also increased pressure on roads, water supplies, coastal areas, and popular hiking routes. As a result, sustainable development has become increasingly important. Local authorities and communities seek to balance economic growth with the protection of natural resources. Efforts include managing access to sensitive trails, promoting local food and crafts, improving waste treatment, and encouraging environmentally responsible tourism. Madeira's future depends on maintaining this balance. Its success cannot be measured only by the number of visitors it attracts, but by whether its landscapes, traditions, and communities remain healthy for generations to come. Madeira's ecosystems have survived for millions of years, yet they face growing environmental pressures. The island's steep terrain makes it naturally vulnerable to erosion, landslides, and flash floods. Heavy rainfall can send water rapidly through narrow valleys, while the removal of vegetation may weaken slopes and increase the risk of damage. Wildfires are another serious threat, especially during hot and dry periods. Fire can destroy native plants, damage wildlife habitats, and expose volcanic soils to erosion. Climate change may intensify these dangers by altering rainfall patterns, increasing temperatures, and placing greater pressure on freshwater resources. Invasive species also threaten Madeira's biodiversity. Introduced plants may spread quickly and replace native vegetation, while non-native animals can disturb nesting birds, insects, and other endemic wildlife. Because many Madeiran species evolved in isolation, they are especially vulnerable to sudden ecological competition. Conservation efforts focus on protecting the Laurisilva Forest, restoring native habitats, controlling invasive species, and monitoring rare plants and animals. Protected landscapes, nature reserves, and marine zones help preserve forests, cliffs, seabird colonies, and coastal ecosystems. Visitors also have an important role. Remaining on marked trails, avoiding litter, respecting closures, and never collecting plants can reduce damage to fragile areas. Conservation in Madeira is not only about preserving scenery. It is about protecting the natural systems that capture water, stabilize mountains, sustain agriculture, and support island life. The survival of Madeira's beauty depends on understanding that every forest, stream, and volcanic slope is part of one connected living system. Madeira began beneath the Atlantic, where volcanic fire slowly built a mountain from the ocean floor. Rain carved its valleys, mist created its forests, and human hands transformed its steep slopes with terraces, vineyards, villages, and levadas. Today, the island stands as a meeting place between geological power, biological richness, and centuries of maritime history. Its cliffs, waterfalls, ancient laurel trees, and cloud-covered peaks remind us that even the most dramatic landscapes are fragile. Madeira is more than an island of extraordinary beauty. It is a living story of transformation, a place where fire became stone, stone became soil, and soil became a garden above the sea.